There is one opening that I have been ignoring or avoiding to present on purpose, maybe due to the fact that I see a lot of videos on YouTube on this particular opening, but I'm going to try and present this in a different way with traps and tricks only. It is the Ponziani opening, and I'm going to show you almost every important trap that you need to know. Trap number one, this is where you want to win a free knight given a chance. Starting with a move pawn to e4, black responds with e5, then you go knight f3, knight c6, and pawn to c3. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call the Ponziani opening. So we deliberately injure our knight by preventing it to sit on c3. And just to be clear, it looks like d4 is the main idea here, but nope, we have other tricky sideline moves, one of which is queen a4 and bishop c4. Watch. There's so many things that black can do in this position, like knight to f6, the top played move, bishop c5, and also pawn to d6, played by over 1 million people on leeches, which is what I want to cover in this trap. This simply paves way for black slide square bishop, and so what I recommend is just to go bishop e2, but this is when you are going to see most of your opponents playing knight to f6, attacking your undefended pawn on e4. But I mean, the move that you should remember to play, even in classical tournaments, ladies and gentlemen, is pawn to d4. You completely ignore this pawn. The thing is, it doesn't matter whether black takes your pawn on e4 immediately, or let's say they start with e takes d4 first, you just take back, and whenever knight takes e4 happens, here is the catch. Pawn to d5, attacking the knight, and now you have seen the reason why we play pawn to c3 on the first move. I told you it's everything to do with queen f4, so you should be on the lookout for this move. This comes with check, by the way, and on the next move you are going to win black's knight on e4 just like that. The easiest way to win this game is to start trading off all your pieces to oversimplify the game. I mean, when you're up a piece or when you have a positional advantage, you want to start trading off pieces but not pawns. Trap number two against the Janish counterattack. This is where you start with e4, then black responds with e5. You go knight f3, knight c6, then pawn to c3, the Ponziani opening again. But hey, it's not every time you're going to see your opponents playing pawn to d6. In fact, the top played move is knight to f6 in this position, so they attack your e4 pawn immediately. Even though you can defend this pawn, just go pawn to d4, of course allowing them to take your free pawn on e4, because we have another idea of going pawn to d5. Yes, this time we are not going to win black's knight for free, since black hasn't played pawn to d6 yet, but there's another idea. After black plays something like knight e7, we can simply go knight takes e5, getting back our pawn, right? So we are no longer down a pawn. If pawn to d6, we have an option of retreating our knight somewhere else. But why not going bishop b5 check immediately? Because you know, if bishop d7... Bishop d7 is the second most played move in the leeches database, maybe due to lack of patience, which makes black to lose the queen immediately, because the only way black can stop this bishop takes d7 check is by donating his queen. So this is probably not good, but that's not the idea, right? We don't expect black to play bishop d7 covering the check. The move is pawn to c6. That's what they play, but this is when you can go d takes c6, and after b takes c6, you go knight takes c6, ready to give a discovery check after you move your knight somewhere else. And if knight takes c6 happens, whoops, there comes a triple fork attacking the rook, knight, and king at the same time. If bishop d7, I propose that you don't take the rook, you take the free piece, the knight. Because that's just free, right? I mean, you are just up a full minor piece. Anyway, let's go back a few moves and see what else black can do after taking their pawn. It's not every time you're going to see black taking back on c6 with his knight. In fact, the top played move is queen b6, you know, counterattacking your bishop. So in this case, I propose you go knight d4. So this is discovery check. Black can't take your bishop. It's defended by your knight now, so they're going to play something like bishop d7, and the best you can do here is just to make them lose their right to castle, bring the king forward, and again you can see that we have this move, queen a4 check if we want, or even this one, queen g4 check, but I don't like this due to pawn to f5. So in this position, you can just put your king to safety first, and after something like g6, the top played move, maybe, you know, they're trying to develop their bishop along this diagonal. This is when you can go rook e1, threatening to capture this, And in case of pawn to f5, which they always play, you now go pawn to f3. See what is happening? They have to move their knight somewhere else. And what did I say again? It's not about the d4 pawn in the Ponziani opening. It's about queen a4 check. Always keep this in mind. This is what makes the Ponziani opening to be powerful. Trap number 3, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, still in the Ponziani opening. And then we see the top played move, knight to f6. Again, you are at liberty of sacrificing your e4 pawn. But hey, we just finished looking at the knight takes e4 line, where we go pawn to d5, and next we take back on e5. But there are some people who will be scared of, taking your free pawn on e4. So you will see them playing pawn to d6 once again, maybe paving way for their light squad bishop, but you want to give them one more chance to take this pawn, right? Which is the whole idea in the Ponziani opening. So the move you can consider here is bishop e2, as if you want to unpin your knight in advance. So this time, if they take on e4, once again you have pawn to d5. So remember, knight takes e4 goes together with pawn to d5 in most cases, in an effort to win the free knight on e4 like this. I mean, after queen a4 check, one of our key moves in the Ponziani opening. Let's move on to the next trap. Trap number 4. This may go as follows. This is where you start with e4, then e5, knight f3, knight c6, again pawn to c3, the Ponziani opening. Now, I did mention to say you will see most of your opponents going knight f6 on move 3 because that's the top played move. That's what looks natural, I mean. So after this, they are attacking your pawn on e4, your undefended pawn on e4. What do? You just simply go pawn to d5. It doesn't even matter even if they start with these, because you can just take back, right? But anyways, most of your opponents are going to take on e4 with their knight, after which you simply go pawn to d5, because what else? Attacking their other knight on c6. There are other instances where black plays knight, but after you take, they don't play pawn to d6 immediately because of the trap that I just showed you earlier, but they rather go knight g6, the second most played move in the Lichess database. What do? Well, there's another trap that I can show you in this line, which begins as follows. You start with bishop d3 as if you're attacking this knight. Okay, the whole idea is that if they take your knight on e5, you can simply take their knight on e4. By the way, you're not doing worse in this position. It's just anyone's game where the best player has to win. They play bishop c5, they play bishop f4, developing your piece with tempo, right? So they go d6, but now you can just castle short. Of course, they are going to do the same. Then you continue attacking, developing your moves with tempo. You go pawn to a4 if you want, or just taking the knight. Anyway, but instead of knight takes, if black chooses to sacrifice his knight on f2, because they think after king takes, they are going to play bishop c5 check, and after something like king e1, this is when they are going to take, forcing you to lose your right to castle. I've seen some players doing this. The solution to knight takes f2 on the 7th move is just to capture the g knight with your bishop first. Yes, sacrificing your queen on d1 temporarily, because you have bishop takes f7 check, and after king e7 only move, you go bishop g5 check. So at best, you're going to win back black's queen on d8, or at worst, you may even end up winning the whole game after pawn to b4 checkmate. Trap number 5. This may happen against your opponents who choose not to take anything. For example, after knight to f6, you play d4 and then they play pawn to d6. You don't always have to do this, especially if they know you. You can also play pawn to d5 immediately instead of playing bishop e2. I mean, again, they'll play knight e7. Immediately you see this arrangement, this is when you can go bishop g5, sacrificing your e4 pawn in a different way. I mean, instead of playing bishop e2, you play bishop g5. The idea is still the same. If knight takes e4, you go queen a4 check, and on the next move, you're going to win the knight. So if you don't want to play bishop e2, you can also try to play bishop g5 in this particular line. Trap number 6 now. This is very serious. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and pawn to c3, it's not every time you're going to see your opponents responding with knight f6, attacking this. Sometimes they play pawn to d5 immediately, trying to stop all the possible traps that I showed you to do with pawn to d5 and knight takes e4. So pay attention. In this particular line, you don't want to take, right? You don't want to take on d5 because after all, black can play pawn to e4 once you take. So the move to remember in this position is queen a4. Remember, this is our key move after all. For example, if d takes e4, you can just go ahead and take the free pawn on e5, putting more pressure on the knight. And for some reason, if black plays queen d5, defending his knight and also counter-attacking your knight, well, you can just go ahead and take the knight on c6. Black can't take with his queen because you have bishop b5, which is going to pin the queen to the king. So they're going to take with the pawn, after which you now go bishop c4. Remember what I told you, they normally play queen d6 here. That's the top played move. There's nothing wrong with putting your king to safety first before you start attacking. So let's say they go knight to f6. This is when you can go pawn to d3 or pawn to d4, whatever. So you just want to take this. If they take your pawn, here comes our little trap in the Ponziani opening that you always need to know. Bishop f4. Developing our bishop in a way of attacking. Black has to retreat his queen, because if they take our bishop, we have bishop takes f7 check, and on the next move we're going to win the queen. Even if black doesn't take your bishop, and let's say they play queen d7, well, you can simply take the free pawn on d3 and move on with life. By the way, black can't take your bishop because they are going to lose their rook on a8 after something like queen takes c6 check. And anyway, back to the Ponziani initial position. If black doesn't play knight to f6 immediately, but instead go pawn to d5, remember to go queen f4, because that's the whole purpose. If d takes e4, you remember to take the free pawn on e5. What if black plays bishop d7 and pinning their knight? Well, the best you can do here is to take the bishop. So at the end of the day, you are going to remain with a bishop pair, which is very good for the end game, while black is going to remain with one bishop only. By the way, if queen takes d7, you simply take on e4 with check. Again, you shouldn't be worried about exchanging queens, because at the end of the day, you still have your bishop pair and a lead in development. Black normally blocks with a bishop, after which you can go bishop b5, pinning the knight, or at worst, you just want to simplify the game this way by doubling up black's pawns on the queen side, after which you play queen e2, and on the next move you cast a shot, and once again you're just ahead in development with a better pawn.